Hello and welcome to this annual episode of the Skiing is Believing podcast, officially affiliated with Ski Racing Media. We are here today to digest and analyse both the drafts for the men's and women's 2026-27 World Cup seasons. It is a World Championship season, of course, a Swiss World Championship season at that. And Alan Rigg, how you doing to talk about skiing in such
Yeah, I'm good.
wonderful
Yeah.
British heat?
Yeah, it does seem a bit strange. Mind you, talking about skiing might just help to cool us down a little bit,
Cool us down.
Yeah.
Ian, welcome back. How are we?
Thank you. Yeah, very, very good. Enjoying the beautiful weather. Ready to talk about snow.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is what we do. This is what we do.
The white stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah.
The snow. Let's get into it then. Of course, we start with Solden Levy Gurgle, as has become a bit of a ritual over the last few seasons. That is the end of the first part of the European tour, and the men will then be over in Copper Mountain, where they were last year for both Super G and Giant Slalom, with the women returning to Killington, where, well, last time we were there, it was all about Michaela Schifrin falling in her attempts at the 100. They'll be back for tech action before they go to Canada for more Giant Slaloms in Tremblant, and the men are in a 4-day race weekend in Beaver Creek. 2 downhills, a Super G and a Giant Slalom. Marco Odermatt will be shattered, Alan.
Well, yeah. He will, but let's face it, he can do it, can't he?
Oh, he can.
Talking about Killington, which they missed. Did they miss out?
Yeah, because the women went to Copper, didn't they?
That was because they've been reshuffling with they've had trouble with the snowmaking, and they've had trouble with the lifts. Apparently, they've updated them a bit, so that's why they're back there, I think.
And I think that also, Ian, makes a bit more sense with going to Canada next to be in the north of the US up in Killington.
Yeah, you're on the East Coast.
You're
in Killington, Vermont, and then it's not too far up to Mont Tremblant in Quebec. So, yeah, all very logical. Good little stop there. I look forward to that because for us in Europe, especially when it's an East Coast race in US and Canada, the timings are great. So they're really good for us. So it's a long way to go if you're a slalom skier for one race. But if you're into GS, then it's a great week, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got back-to-back weekends for the women there. Levy, way up in Finland, Gurgle, Austria, and then over to Killington, Vermont, and then you do get a decent rest period up until Christmas. The women will stay in North America for an extra week than the men because they're heading back to Beaver Creek for a 3-day speed weekend triple header there, which is very exciting before they return to the classics, St. Moritz for speed before Christmas. Over on the men's side there, back in Europe, Val d'Isère, of course, Val Gardena, of course, Alta Badia, of course, and Madonna di Campiglio is back in its pre-Christmas night slalom slot that we all love. Interesting that Alta Badia slalom is also a night event, just 2 days earlier. Supposedly.
Good.
I didn't quite realise that, but yeah, more entertaining under the floodlights sometimes. The Italians always seem to put on a good show in those events.
Yeah, well, I did point out before that we've got for the men we've got three night races, and for the ladies we've only got one, haven't we? Flecko.
Well, they're both night races in Flecko.
Yeah, but you've got
in terms of one resort.
Yeah, one resort. Yeah.
The pre-Christmas slalom for the women will be in France on the Tuesday, which has been a night slalom in the past, but I don't think it will be this year, actually. That will be Courchevel or Maribel. And then they are heading to a brand new destination post-Christmas in Gassau, Austria for tech events. No Leeds, no Semerin, who've been rotating for the last couple of decades, I think. So that's a new resort coming in there, but should be exciting to to stop off at, whilst the men are keeping up with the classics for speed in Bormio, where of course they weren't at this time of last year because of the Olympics being there.
Yeah.
The following weekend, they head to Kranjska Gora for New Year Tech, and of course it is then Adelboden, Wengen, Kitzbühel and Schladming before slalom pre-World Championships in Chamonix, France, where Daniel Yule might just do something special. As for the women, through January, flat out, as Alan mentioned there, with a couple of night events, GS and slalom, much like the men's Schladming model going on in the start of January. It is yet to be decided where the first speed events of the new year will be for the women, but the second will certainly be in Cortina before the usual Tuesday giant slalom in Kronplatz. Then they go a little bit more eastern from Jasna, Slovakia and Kranjska Gora, Slovenia, before the World Championships with Tech. Then it's the World Championships, which the only real big thing there is team combined once again on the calendar, which is going to be amazing, of course. It is the men first in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, whilst the women are in Lenzerheide, both on speed action. Then the women go to Garmisch for downhills. The men go to Saalbach, as that returns to the World Cup for the first time since finals in 2024. The men finish up with speed in Kvitfjell, Tech in Ore, while the women have Tech in Soldeu, Andorra, and to be confirmed for speed in way up in the gods of Narvik, before they all reconvene in Sun Valley, Idaho, for the finals. Whew, someone else talk.
Yeah, just one little point about Kranjska.
Yeah, go on.
They had a lot of snow last week.
Yeah, they did.
So hopefully it's not come too soon.
Yeah. My aunt was looking for a nice sunny getaway in Slovenia and ended up being snowed in.
Exactly.
Last week or the week before. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's moved, hasn't it? I think that's a good call. It's been a little bit later, especially for the men, hasn't it, in the season? So,
yeah,
I think when I was stayed in Kranjska Gora at the end of March, and we had snow and then 15 degrees. The weather was sort of crazy. That was only 10 days or so after the World Cups there. But I think moving it, the men are at the start of January, women at the end of January. I think it gets the hill prep done early. Should be more stable temperatures for snowmaking and colder overnight. You just never know. So I think that's a good call, shifting that one a little bit earlier.
Yeah. I said just before we started this that I was really looking forward to women's night GS and night slalom in Flachau. I think that is very marketable.
Yeah.
Very kind of, I can see the model of Schladming, like I said, when I just went through it there. And for that to be the first races of the new year, I would imagine there'll be a lot of people watching, particularly when a Julia Scheib or a Catty Trupper could be eyeing a World Cup win. Very, very kind of easy to get excited about for people in that area, people in Austria, whether they're huge ski racing fans or not.
Yeah.
It happens in Schladming. Why not make it a thing? New Year night Tech in Flachau. Let's keep that, please.
It's been good, hasn't it? The night GS is something that I'm, as a fan, really, really keen on, because it's not something you see often. It's a little different. It does bring the crowds out. Austria, as we know, is just winter sport. Winter sports mad. You got the four hills going on at the same time. Quite know the date, so that's just, the ski jumping. So there's just so much going on in that part of the world at that time of year, and it just puts so much attention on. And I think a night GS, maybe athletes, coaches, some will like it, some probably won't. But, I think when you look at marketability, doing something a little bit different, I think it's a real positive. We've seen it in the past as well, the night GS. It's just cool.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Would you like to see more?
Yeah. I'd have all the races under floodlights. You get sports where you would think ski racing in a broad sense, everything happens in the morning or early afternoon. But I mean, I like a lie-in. So night events are fun.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Like, it's cool for us in Europe to be watching races in the evening on a Friday or Saturday night when they're over in America or Canada.
Yeah.
And there's so much potential with that, because when you're in America, it's also easier for people over there to watch, because you've got to factor in that a lot of the time, unless you're an absolute die-hard ski racing fan, you're not going to get up in the middle of the night to watch
No.
Kronplatz GS, you know?
No.
And unless you love Michaela Schifrin, which quite a lot of people do.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's hard for an American audience to get as invested as everybody, as Fizz, I suppose, want them to be, when the majority of the race calendar they're marketing to them, they're losing sleep over.
Yeah.
And that is one thing in this kind of globalization of it. There's always going to be somewhere in the world where they're up in the middle of the night.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's unavoidable. But I think more races in America than ever before.
Yeah.
With finals back there again, Sun Valley, Idaho, doing a good job in 2025, I think, across the board, apart from those downhills that were cancelled. You had Von getting on the Super G podium, Group Barami stealing the title. I think all the men's ones might have been decided. Christopherson took the slalom title at the end there, didn't he?
Was like 5 guys.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
3 or 4 or 5 guys, wasn't it? Christopherson got it.
Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, what you're saying about the US market is massive, but it's, I would say, fairly poorly served in terms of how you can access the races. And that sounds like that's moving in the right direction. Maybe not quite this season, but it's all shaping up with the centralization of rights to hopefully support that market and those spectators. But you strip all that away, yeah, you've got to get up in the middle of the night. And I would have personally a slightly longer stay in North America, personally. There's so much we're not seeing. I don't have to talk to many people about Lake Louise. Man, do we miss the Lake Louise stop? I certainly do anyway, as a fan. I'd love to see Whistler host some races again. There's a whole, and it's great that we're going to the East Coast with Tremblant, because when I was watching ski racing, I don't think we barely went on the East Coast. I don't remember Canadian races on the East Coast. There might have been some, or too many US races on the East Coast, like Whiteface Mountains, another place that I think would be fun to visit, outside Lake Placid. So, but obviously, as you say, there's going to be stuff throughout the season where someone is going to have to get up in the middle of the night, and the diehard fans will. But it's how you market that and how you broadcast that. Now with on-demand, platforms, you can just watch it when you want, which wasn't the case like 15, 20 years ago. You had to set something, Matt, for your benefit, called a VHS, and try and tape stuff, which was interesting in the middle of the night. But yeah, there's so much more we're going to get into on this. So
yeah, I think, do you not think with an American finals, there was also scope to have an Aspen race or a Palisades Tahoe race before that? So they're not just traveling to the US for finals.
Yeah.
Because now instead the women are going from way up in Norway all the way across to Idaho, and the men are up in Sweden in Åre. But that was potential for this season anyway, with finals being there.
Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult.
So hard.
It's all right sitting here saying they could do this, they could do that. But when you look at it, you've got to look at the factor of how much travelling you're incurring, and you've also to look at the factor, what's the weather going to be like everywhere?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, as well as I do, the change in the weather is going to be a big factor next year, I think.
And again, and many other seasons into the future, I'd imagine.
Well, yeah.
How do we feel about about kind of a few changes. I feel like February is the biggest month of change, kind of post World Champs. There always seems to be a little bit of, oh well, how do we back up that sensational year best of the year event with another World Cup that's going to keep people on the edge of their seats? And personally, that's not Garmisch-Partenkirchen anymore. It's
But
been
it
on
could
the
be. That's
calendar.
the problem. It could be because
Oh,
it's
it could
great.
be
I like the hill,
because it's a
but
classic, unfortunately.
yeah. But the location at the time means it's low altitude. I think the other thing, this happens in Olympic years. Obviously, it's that for our friends in the UK expression after the Lord Mayor's show, it's all a little bit flat. We had it in ski jumping. We went straight into ski flying after the Olympics, like a week later. In fact, the ski jumping was done after about 7 days of the games, so there was a bit of a break. But we kind of hit the fans with like what they want to see, which is really, really long jumps. So it sparked the interest again post games. And it's the same, like you look at the calendar, we've got world champs, looking at the women, world champs, Lenzerheide, Garmisch. The question that I'd sort of pose is too much time of these, too much time of the season taken up with the world champs. Like, do we need to accept maybe the world champs is not going to be a 2 week event? Should world champs be at the end of the season? Then you've got all weather issues, but it does kind of feel everything does fall a little bit flat at the end of the season. I struggle with World Cup finals because so much is already decided. If something's not decided, you can have some absolute crackers like we had this year and like we had for the men's slalom previous season. But if it's all decided, it's a little bit of a, I struggle to get into it. So, maybe you put world champs at the end of the season. As Alan said, it's really easy to sit here, in our shorts and t-shirt, having a nice cold drink and say, do this, do that. But the reality out there, the people making this happen, they've got a really, really tough job. And for the most part, I think they do a fantastic job, I should say, in giving us what we love, which is ski racing. So I am a bit like, all right, world champs, is it the right part of the season? Is it, does it take up too much time? I don't know, but it's a question to pose.
Yeah, so could you combine the world champs with the finals?
There's always options, isn't there? But
what a week of skiing that'd be. What a fortnight.
The thing with that though, that gives you 2 weeks there for the finals, but it also gives you 2 weeks in the sort of early January, early February, where you can fit some more races in.
Because that is this World Championships being where it is, and that training run starting on the Monday, February 1st. Then you're only allowed one race the weekend before.
Yeah.
So that also you get an extra one there, and then you've got another 2 weekends. So it's not just it's 5 races at the least on both the women's
and the other challenge as well with the world champs in February is it clashes with one of the busiest ski weeks of the season. So if you removed the world champs, it's quite hard to find resorts that want to host close down 1 or 2 pistes, give up a whole load of hotel rooms at a reduced rate. So it's really difficult to run stuff that week, even for the World Cup. Left fielders, you have individual standalone world championships. So we try and cram everything into one resort, and there's plenty. There's places obviously that can handle that, or areas that can handle that. But you go, actually, do you know what? This year, Kitzbühel, we're going to have 1 day World Cup, 1 day is the World Championships. And so it's not a massive event in terms of the infrastructure of trying to host every discipline, men and women. I think it's great when men and women are together for races. I think that's strong. However, if you go down that individual route, which happened during COVID in some disciplines, we just went ski cross, right, we're going to host it in Idrefjalla, Sweden. Snowboard cross did the same. Parallel GS snowboard, that was in Slovenia. individual standalone. And then it's how you market that and how you present that to make it bigger than a World Cup. But that isn't, again, an alternative. I'm not saying that's necessarily my view, but there are different ways you can host it.
Let's think about this then, because right now in ski racing, is a World Championships in Switzerland not just going to be the most amazing?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you think it has the potential to be bigger and better than Saalbach?
It's when you look at it afterwards, our World Champs, in terms of how well we remember it, generally comes down to the quality of the racing.
Yeah.
You could have the best hill in the world. You could have the men's downhill World Champs in Kitzbühel, but if the weather's a bit rubbish, it's windy, it's foggy, they're on a shortened start, probably not going to remember it for that long, are we? Where it's going to drift out. But yeah, I mean, it's great. Like, Crans-Montana is going to be a fantastic host of the World Championships. Everything together is really, really cool. I'm just the throwing ideas around, saying not necessarily my ideas, but how you can tweak stuff and move stuff around. But
and how do you feel that in the current format, with World Championships the way that they are, and looking ahead, we're going to have Crans-Montana, which has the potential to be huge, which then we're then in Narvik, where Norwegian ski racing, particularly in men's tech, is at an all-time high, and then Val Gardena, which is a classic. There's the next 3 World Championships for you. Yeah. How do we make these 2-week World Championship kind of get-togethers more marketable, more?
I think they are really marketable.
But are they being marketed effectively as extra special? And do they bring in?
Yeah, I think they do.
Much larger audiences than any given World Cup.
Ultimately, the sport is the same, isn't it? But I think in the right markets, they do, and it really does mean something. And the coverage is usually improved as well, which is great. I think the challenge in our sport, in many ways, is that we have quite a few big events, don't we? So, let's look at athletics for an example, a sport that has, global appeal, super accessible for people around the world, relatively low cost if you want to do it recreationally to a point, although you can spend a lot of money on shoes. But then week in, week out, we're sports fans, which means we're watching the 100 meters at the Olympics, all of us. Let's be honest. We're probably watching the World Champs when it's on. But are we tuning in for Diamond League? Yeah, then it gets into the hardcore. And the Michael Johnson had a Grand Slam track and field, I think it was called. It did one season. They were trying to find a way to market that sport outside of the major events. We look at looking at the men's calendar for a second here. I get excited every year for Wengen, Kitzbühel, Schladming, Night Slalom. We have these big things that people tune into. So actually,
you got Adelboden before that.
Forgot about that. Yeah, it's great. But I never get to watch Adelboden. Something about that weekend, although I might be free that weekend next year. So,
Adelboden's amazing.
It is. I love it. It's great.
Like, you like that, right?
Like right now, Odermatt and Mayard, where they are in GS. Mayard in slalom is world and Olympic champion. Like, that is probably the biggest tech weekend on the calendar. And it kind of goes under the radar. Everyone loves it. Like,
but I think that's the point.
Amazing, but it's brilliant.
We have in ski racing such things that we look forward to every single season. We're spoiled in many ways because the sport goes to beautiful places around the world, and then you've got to get up for World Champs.
Yeah, Alan, you said to me when we were talking earlier that this is a good World Cup calendar.
I think it is.
You came and sat here and said,
I think it is.
Are there any changes you'd make?
What I would like to take
Go on, you go. Yeah.
on this point, and that is
Post-world
when
champ.
you're talking about, post-world champs. I don't care where you have them, when you have them. They'll always go flat after them. It's like FA Cup, Champions League, whatever in football. Afterwards, nothing's going to come up to that level, and it's unfortunate for these 1, 2, 3, 5, these 5 resorts that they're going to be hosting athletes who are disappointed and ready for end of season, because that's basically what you're looking at.
And that's also the point where if you're going into March and there's still 5, 6 guys or girls that can win the globe, it's a different story.
Well, like Ian said, if like this year, you've still got a lot open, then you can justify it being there. But if it's all been won, then
like right now, that men's speed title, even at World Championships, you've still got 4 downhills and 4 Super Gs.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, by Kvitfjell, Odermatt's going to have won one of those titles.
Oh.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the notion as well. Like you've got to look at the history of the sport, World Championships. We've got World's Olympics, World Cup. If you flip it across to tennis, golf, golf have the majors, and they both have the Olympic Games. They don't have a World Championships as such. But then if you look at Formula One, there's nothing. It just builds, and sometimes the title is decided a few races before. Sometimes it goes down to the last race. We've got so many big things in our sport, and that in some ways makes it really tricky, because you've got to keep that attention all the time, and then it has these peaks and troughs. I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
It's difficult.
Let you guys come in on that.
On the women's side, what's the kits bill?
Great question.
What's the kits bill, the Wengen, the Adelboden, the Schladming? Because we're talking there about how absolutely incredible January is, year in, year out on the men's side. But there is, the only one you could say that is Cortina, consistently there is Cortina. And obviously you had Olympics there last year. World Championships there just 6 years ago. By the time they'll be there again, 6 years on. That is a big deal to everybody. But apart from that, so many of the women's resorts are interchangeable year on year. You look at the way that Severin and Lienz have switched, like we've said, and it kind of feels weird to not have one of those on this draft. But that's my point. Can Flachau become the female Schladming? We need that. I think feel,
it's not. It's not
about
trying to compare it to the men's side. It is about building it up and ensuring that the women's tour has the right attention and media coverage, which I think we are pretty blessed in winter sports, barring 1 or 2 disciplines, in terms of parity and equal pay and the media coverage as well, the live television coverage. Some other disciplines in phys are catching up. They're getting there. There's a women's 4 hills in ski jumping coming this season for the first time. So it's about the attention that you put on races, where you put them, when you put them, how you market them. For me, there was a place like Maribor was always a great women's weekend.
You've lost those classics, Lake Louise, Maribor.
Yeah, Lake Louise was a big one. Beaver Creek's got the chance to do that. Yeah.
Like women's taking Ore was always really good, because that is quite often somewhere where a title has been won, with it being right before finals. And we've had some amazing races there, and that's not on the men's calendar, which is obviously going to be a good race. But just interesting. And I don't know why. And obviously this decision has been made prior to the speed event there last February, and I think it went even into March. But Soldeu speed this year in Andorra was amazing.
Yeah.
And they're back on tech there, which I thought it's cool to be there, because otherwise, you're not going further west than France at all in Europe. But yeah, I think
Why are we
that
not in
Solideo
Spain?
speed event.
Come on, Spain. Step
Spain.
up.
Ian, do you want to make your more in Canada, more, well, something in Asia point now?
We're going to get onto that at some point. But I think the point is, it's really, we've got to get this across, is it's really hard to host a World Cup. It's really expensive. In a lot of sports, like Formula One, you pay a big fee, I think, to be on the calendar, and then Formula One come in, take over, do everything, boom. It's very much, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong on this, anyone. Um, but it's still quite often the local ski clubs that have got a huge part to play in hosting the World Cups. And it's done traditionally, it was done, the world, it's set up to promote different resorts. That's what it's for. It's evolved into a global, nearly global, elite sport, and it's fantastic. But costs a lot of money to run the races. You've got to then get your return on that. So I don't know the ins and outs of how you get on the calendar and the costs to do that. I look at sports that have a promoter behind them. So you got the FIA Formula One World Championship, but FIA, are the rules and the governance of everything, the technical standards. But it's the promoter Liberty Media that deliver the product. Same in MotoGP as well. We looks like don't have that layer in there, and I think that's where you get a real difference. Now, there's obviously, if you go through the documents, everything you need to do, there's minimum standards for everything to host the World Cups. You do get barely similar look and feel, but you spot a big World Cup from a small World Cup, but they should all be big. That's my point, is they should all be big each, and that comes on to, do we need less races, fewer races? Because we're spoiled, we're absolutely spoiled. From the end of October through to the end of March, it is just like ski racing. There's like, what, 1 weekend off, 2 weekends off after Solden.
I'm not gonna sit here and complain that there's too much ski racing on.
No, for us, but
because
No.
in the winter, when there's snow, it would be silly not to. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you've got a blue sky, beautiful day in Switzerland in December, and you're having a weekend off because you're going into April, like, if it got to a point where athletes couldn't keep up with the pace of the sport anymore, as to what's happening in tennis, very recent news is that as the world number one's crashed out.
Yeah.
Then absolutely, let's go as far into April as possible, and let's keep the same amount of races.
We are limited by atmospheric conditions, climatic conditions in our sport. And, I think you've got to take away the surface that we compete on and think of it as, is this a global media product? The IP of ski racing. What are we there to do? Are we there to give people like us three, something to do every Saturday, Sunday, to watch ski racing? Or is it there to, make an awful lot of money for the athletes and provide a brilliant competitive platform? Because if we did go Southern Hemisphere, which, as I've said before, I am fully on board with, then you have to change the calendar in the winter. That you'd have to tweak that, I think. So, and then you have to look at where everything is. I personally am not bothered if we had a weekend off, because I guarantee everyone that lives in the mountains, if the weather's nice, they're not sitting in on a Saturday watching the ski racing. They're up skiing. It's just us in the lowland countries and our friends across the pond that are getting up at 4 a.m. that are watching the races. But those in, someone in Gossau on that Monday for the GS, if it's good weather, they might pop their head in, but they're off skiing, aren't they? So, same across Austria and the Alps. I think, if you're going to make change, you've got to establish, where do we want to go? Do we want to focus on the existing fans, existing markets, capitalize on that? In which case, it's going to be European with a smattering of other resorts around the world stepping in for a weekend? Or do we go, this sport is absolutely amazing. This is, it's edge of the seats, men and women putting their bodies, their lives on the line, sacrificing everything. How can we take that to an even bigger audience, market it, sell it, and make these people truly global superstars like athletes in other sports? If it's the latter, then there would have to be some pretty dramatic change. I don't think you can do both, personally.
No. It's difficult to anyway.
Yeah.
Come June 11th, there might be a new president at the helm.
Mm-hmm.
And that could bring more change than we expected come 2026. And in terms of a lot of elements at Fizz. But with what's broken out in the last week or two, with 7 of the biggest ski racing nations, or in fact skiing, snow sports nations coming together and compiling this letter to Fizz, it's difficult. It's going to be difficult. Does that have a serious impact on the election results, or is that 7 nations?
Well, if you look through that, those nations probably would not have been voting for the current president. I may be wrong, but I don't think that would have been a surprise, because I think every nation gets the same amount of votes, same as FIFA. So there's clear ways in which you can get enough votes to win whoever is running. But your point is, if there is a new president, that will mean different ideas. And then, whilst at the moment it appears those nations are aligned on those points, any change in the presidency at Fizz may not result in all of those nations still being aligned on things. And that would make change, if people felt there was changes to be made, quite difficult to get through as well. So yeah, we'll wait and see on that. But you're right, it will, if there is a change in president, then things may look a little different. And it will take a while for a new person to come in and get through the various committees and things like that. That's the way that Fizz works is quite old school. Lots of committees and subcommittees and things, and that traditionally, I'm not blaming Fizz or anything like that, but can be quite a slow way to get things done. Whereas if you have a promoter behind a sport, rightly or wrongly, big pile of money, I'm an investor from country X, Y, Z, boom, here's whatever, well, let's go make this happen. It won't happen at Fizz.
Johan Eliasch has been in since 2021, and there is change on the way, even under his presidency, but we are 5 years into it.
I think you've got to accept.
You know what I mean? Like he's trying to make changes. He will make changes, but on that point of how long it has taken to instill those ideas and kind of get the groundwork, obviously very difficult to do with such a huge global organization.
Yeah,
but it does going to take time, and that's fine. But it's kind of another restart if we do get a new president. It could be another 5 years before we see any more minor change come in. And
then what if there's another
whether it needs
challenger
to change
in
or
5
not.
years' time?
Yeah, exactly. And then you're stuck in a cycle, because if things don't change within 5 years, you might get 16 nations next time writing in.
Well, and that is when you look at the governance. We're getting really nerdy here, and again, apologies if I'm wrong on this, but when you look at the governance of an international federation like this, you then say, does one person have too much influence? Is that, and I'm not talking about any specific individual, is that one office or role able to influence too much, or should they be there as a guardian and let the people, the layers that exist, to do their job? yeah, I don't want to get too deep into that because I've got knowledge of Fizz committees and things. I've seen Fizz work exceptionally fast at times, and to their massive credit due to the circumstances around why they had to work really fast. But I see a lot of slow moving things because you've got to get agreement with everyone on the committee and votes and stuff, and you have to question, whilst in theory that's fair, it's not necessarily fair, but it's a tricky way to run a global sport.
Yeah,
You haven't got to put too much credence on the fact that the president carries all the weight, because they won't. Because if the people on the committees don't like the way they're moving, they will soon upset it. They're not in any organisation. The top figure is usually there as a figurehead, and they don't make all the decisions. They tell you they have input into them, but you've got to remember you could actually get a scenario whereby he gets knocked out and somebody else comes in, and the changes they want to make are detrimental to what you're thinking.
I think a challenge as well on this is they created the office of Chief Executive Officer, didn't they? Effectively CEO, and that's Urs Lehmann. And if I recall, was it 2021, he was one of the challengers.
Yeah.
So he brought him in, and by all accounts, he had done a really good job at Swiss Ski. But if there is a change of president and Urs Lehmann's not his or her guy, in some ways, changing someone like Urs Lehmann, Michel Vion, those day-to-day people, because that's what Urs Lehmann is there. He's day-to-day management of Fizz. That's a bigger issue because that impacts all the staff at Fizz as well. So it's not just a change of president. I want a different CEO in, or a different whoever it is. It's not about these individual people. It's just the knock-on effects of change can be quite dramatic.
Yeah, we will just have to wait and see what happens in Serbia next month, and that is definitely a story that we're going to follow and take interest in.
We should go to watch it live as well. We should go to watch it live. I watched the last one.
I believe it's on Fizz TV. I remember watching that. Maybe it was just like the general meeting last year meeting. No, I don't know why I did, but I did.
It's not going to change much this year anyway.
No, there's nothing. No,
I don't think so. Projected out, it might do, but I don't think you'll get much change this year.
But the biggest change has been in the media landscape, hasn't it? And that's where the potential for the US market, and I'm saying US because I'm not saying, I don't think it would be the same in Canada potentially, because the broadcasting landscape is slightly different. But that's where, with the centralization of rights, you may get a better product, week in, week out product for the US market. They can pay their money to one place, or however it's distributed to them. It'd be probably slightly different for races that take place in the US, but maybe it'll be more accessible. And that's probably the biggest change. If I'm being honest, that's change I see that could have a huge impact.
I think a change that I see that could have a huge impact, whether more or less than what you just said there, Ian, is the the growth and the potential increase in regards to everything for continental cups. If we can get those Europas, those NORAMs, even in some of your South America and Oceania, Australia, New Zealand Cup competitions worth World Cup, or worth something, because right now they're worth ranking. And as important as that is for guys to go away and win some races and start bib 35 instead of bib 60 from Solden, it doesn't have as much significance as it certainly could. And this is something that is quite likely to be explored, we believe, under Eliash's Fizz.
It's at the moment, Europa Cup is predominantly a development tool for ski racers. It's a step on the pathway. If you're really good, you'll do a few Europa Cups and end up on World Cup really quickly. But it's a development tool. Even if you've been in the sport for a while, you drop off World Cup, you go back up, you come down, you go back up. I was thinking earlier about it, in many ways, it's like you have to really elevate it, because when are they going to put that? They're going to be on broadcast. If we look at the calendar, we said it's almost every weekend. So they're going to be on weekdays. At the moment, some of them do go into weekends, but if you're broadcasting that, unless you've got skin in the game, you're watching World Cup over Europa Cup. So how do you then market it right to generate the revenues that is needed? Firstly, to put the right broadcast together on a Europa Cup so it's properly watchable, NORAM and all continental cups. That it's tricky. So the plan and principle, I think, is really good. I like it. Execution of it will be challenging, not impossible, but it will be tough.
The top 10 of Wednesday's Europa Cup and NORAM Cup start Saturday's World Cup.
Yeah.
Is a very simple way to put it, but is potentially the easiest way to integrate those two things and connect them in a much more broader sense than they are currently. Because you can win a Europa Cup on, well, whenever they're on. Take Freddie, for example, this year, winning on Tuesday. He goes to Alta Badia at the weekend and didn't finish, but he's still starting in the 60s.
Yeah, but he could have gone to Alta Badia anyway, even without the Europa Cups.
Exactly.
So the point,
he could have raced those and had 2 DNFs in France.
Yeah, and he could have scored in Alta Badia and not scored in the Europa Cups. Yeah. A completely left field.
He could have won the World Cup,
Yeah. Completely left field is you elevate the Conti Cups to such a point, and you have that they're almost like World Cups. So they run more at weekends, and then you just have your absolute monument World Cups. It's a different
Tennessee.
Little bit, but you have big Europa Cup, big NORAM, all broadcast, focusing on the markets that matter. So the sponsors in the US, NORAM supported by US, Canadian brands, same in Europe. But one of the issues is not so much around the world is so many of the big sponsors of the World Cup are Austrian, Swiss, like in other disciplines, Polish companies and things like that. So they want to be marketing to their own audience. But you could elevate Europa Cup to such a point, NORAM's, Far East Cup as well, then come together at the absolute top for these monuments on a, you still got ski racing every weekend at a really high level. And then you come together you get a weekend off, boom, and it's the big event. I don't know if that would ever work, but other ways to do it. There's a lot. I mean, as Alan rightly said, it's so easy to sit here and throw ideas out.
I'm just thinking, you're talking about the Europa being a development competition. Surely the bottom half of the World Cup is a development.
They can still win World Cups.
They can still win them because they're in there.
Like we've just said, so can athletes that
they're in there,
in Europa all the time. But the bottom half of the World Cup, so let's say outside the top 30, on average, is the half. And quite often you'll have people outside the top 30 scoring relatively big points on a consistent basis. I don't know the numbers on it, but you think about the amount of times you hear in tech events, athletes in the second run with, bibs all the way through. And even there's examples season after season of athletes scoring podiums from outside the top 30, which is very fun when it happens. Yeah. That is something that, you arguably, whilst you're saying this, reverse it. Make Marco Odermatt the last man on the hill in the downhill.
Yeah,
I mean that's going to cause other problems with conditions. Like that is completely.
We've had these conversations, around studios and with people in the sport for a long time, and to credit Fizz, they tried different stuff in speed. For me, it's where the crescendo of an event It's got to be at the end, not at the start of a broadcast.
And that's the other thing, that they've tried it in the
challenge speed is always going to have, unless you do something like you either have small fields, it's much smaller fields, so it's a shorter broadcast overall. And I'm talking, 25, 30 people max in your speed, so that it's done in an hour, hour and 15, hour 20. Bit like a tech second run. That way, it's everyone in it has got a chance. Then you can look at flipping things or have something, random bib draws. I don't know, but
and they've tried it in the past.
Yeah, in it with the two run downhill. Remember that? The two run downhill.
Does this work? Does only having 5 athletes before the best 10 work in speed? Would it not be better even if the best were 20 to 30, and you still have fair conditions? Like
it's an
I
outdoor
know
sport,
it's changed a lot in the last kind of 20 years with bib numbers.
Yeah, it has moved around a lot. It is an outdoor sport, though, isn't it? So there's always going to be some sort of randomness to it, and that's good. Ski racing, at the end of the day, it's got to be a bit random with conditions. The conditions are a huge factor in ski racing. You've got to handle them. That's important. Whether that's perfect or whether you get a bit of fog, tough. But ultimately, the purist fans are quite happy because we know we're going to tune in, we're going to watch. We'll watch the bib 30, bib 35, and probably turn off. So do you go, okay, well, we want to get a bigger audience, which means making changes, or do you want to just sort of tweak around the edges a little bit that probably doesn't keep anyone happy?
And you've got the circumstance where Beaver Creek Super G this year, you've had the bottom half of the World Cup going a downhill, and one of them's the winner because you can't have the final 30 go because of conditions, and then you've got the most attractive part of the event not even starting, and that could throw up some very interesting World Cup winners.
Yeah, but that's why it's such a good sport.
Exactly,
because of all
this we're saying, all comes down to that.
Yeah. My only fear would be if you talk about splitting the top 30. I think you'd end up like the football. You'd end up with an elite division, and everybody else would be everybody else.
That's already like that, though, isn't it?
Not really, no, because you've just contradicting yourself there. You said that you can be number 60 and still win it.
Yeah, you're not gonna, though, are you?
No, but what I'm saying is, if
you're both 60 for a reason.
If you have 30, and them 30 race, then you're splitting it up.
But I remember an interview we did 2 years ago with a Czech athlete who was starting in around 40, late 30s, early 40s. Still hasn't scored World Cup points in GS, but was making this point that her starting bib 40 week in, week out, it doesn't guarantee World Cup points. Even, I mean, starting in the top 30 doesn't guarantee you World Cup points, of course, but the best athletes are there because they've scored those points to get them there.
Oh yeah.
And the FIS ranking is changing, I believe, with certain things ahead of the new season. I remember
shipping.
Yeah, I remember speaking to Leo Angino about it in Hafjell, him saying, I'm going doing some slaloms so I can start inside the top 50 in World Cup slalom next season. Because he was going to go and try and win the French nationals. to get... Did he? No. I think Amier and Moufat Jean, they were there, so,
Do you know why a lot of these small nations that I think in tech, you're right. The way tech is at the moment, the way conditions are, we saw it so many races. You could be bid 50, 60, and doesn't happen every week, but most weeks there's somebody that just drops one in there, and then gets an early start number, second run, boom, top 15, top 10. But if you go you run the data across a long period of time, particularly in speed, a lot of those teams are there. They're 5-6 seconds off. They're not going to win from bib 50. unless you're like Franjo von Almen in your first couple of starts and you just start smashing it. But some of those small nations are there because it's cheaper to be on World Cup, and you get the training runs as well.
Yeah,
and that's a factor. See it. I did it in ski cross. I took my guys, we filled the World Cup spots because we got phys rate, and I got to train. They were not. Some of them were really good. Some of the men and women we had in the team were, fantastic. But there was a few others that were developing. They were not quite at the top level, but we could take them along, either for run or, if the quotas allowed, we would start, because it was a great experience and it saved us money. Is that the right thing for World Cup? You don't see it, someone entering Formula One World Championship just because it's cool to drive around Silverstone, and be like 10 seconds back. It's for me, that's one of the things. It's great. It's so accessible. You can form a federation for a small Caribbean island, find an athlete, with the right passport, get them to 90 fizz points or whatever, and then off you go, whatever the number is at the moment, and you're on World Cup. You can't go into Wimbledon. You can enter the Open if your handicap's low enough, but it's got to be like 2 or 3 or something. So, that's another side to it. It's historical in ski racing. That it is kind of a meritocracy in that way. If you've got the right money, the right enough skill, you can be at the top level. That's why we say Europa Cup in so many ways is harder, because it's so packed. From like the 1 to 60, 1 to sort of 45, 50, everyone's really close. It's not always the case on World Cup, because partly the conditions as well. So
you've got World Cups, which in tech events can have 70 athletes. You've got Europa Cups, which in tech events can have 100 athletes. Does there need to be another one, a third tier to that?
Oh, there is.
Yeah, but in between a fizz race in, well, we always say a fizz race into the Sud Tirol where there's 200 people starting.
Yeah, and they're all going to be the next Olympic champion.
Yeah, where's the gap there between the 16-year-olds in the Sud Tirol to the Europa Cup to
that's the hard bit, though. That's the beauty of the sport as well, is you've got to grind it out in these sort of local races. You grind it out. It's slightly different maybe for us in the UK. We don't travel around to races, but there's certain clubs in Austria will do the races relatively local to them, and those athletes that get picked up from that meet criteria for like a regional team or canton team in Switzerland will do a bit more, might get a Europa Cup spot on home soil. There's kind of a clear route. I personally don't think you need a third tour, if you like, because you kind of make your own. In the reality, though, is, I'm sorry, North American listeners, viewers, if we're still on YouTube, NORAMs are not at the same level as Europa Cups. Maybe the top few athletes, are ultra competitive, but in terms of depth of field,
it's a stretch as well. It's not. Yeah. Europa Cup's just Europa better than NORAM. NORAM is, a little
Europa
bit behind.
Cup, NORAM, yeah. So it is different parts of the world as well. I've totally forgotten the point I was trying to make there, if I even had one.
No, but this is the thing that I would say, because I know we've spoken so many times about there should be more North Americans in Europa Cups, because that is the next step from NORAM. You can't, even people that win NORAM titles are not necessarily going to score World Cup points straight away. But for the younger athletes that are, getting big results in the NORAMs, I mean, there's a 16-year-old American who's won the NORAM title this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if she scored World Cup points next season, but I also wouldn't be surprised if she didn't for 5 or 6 years.
I think as well, you've got so many, you go to Northern Italy, all of Austria, most of Switzerland, Southern Germany, the Alps, the Pyrenees, across Europe. If you're not cutting it, if you're on 35 points, someone will join the club first year Fizz and get really close to you. Every single one of these clubs got talent. And there's a wider issue that numbers clubs not quite got the depth that they had in certain nations. Some clubs shutting down in Europe and merging and things. But ultimately, there's a pipeline of talent. Nations like the UK don't quite have that same sort of depth. That's why you will see athletes sort of floating around on the Europa Cup, in the 40s, 50s, not necessarily taking a long time. And that's cool because you might get there. But you don't get that opportunity if you're Austrian. You start, boom, you don't deliver, you're out. It's the kind of point I've made a bit about Brensteiner and Julius Scheib as well. I still don't believe if this was 10, 15 years ago, they'd have had quite as long a World Cup as they had to have the success. So someone's been really smart somewhere, or they didn't have enough talent coming through. But that next level down, there's so much upward pressure. So if you want to make Europa Cup and you're from one of these big Alpine nations, you've got to be really good. The route is there. Wherever you're from in the world, just ski fast and finish.
This was a thing that I saw come up, particularly on the men's side, but you can kind of make the point on the women's. 9 speed events, 9 downhill, 9 Super G, 12 giant slalom, 10 slalom. And the point was, I think it was rather dramatized. The point was, are they trying to build a calendar so Odermatt doesn't win the overall? But I think if you had 12 slaloms and 10 GS, then maybe you could make that argument. But no one's gonna beat him. Like, however many races you have, if he's in the top 5 in every race, or the top 7, whatever it is, in every race he's finished, barring like 2 in the last 5 years, he's going to win the overall.
Yeah, because he's the best ski racer. But why is there more slaloms? 10, 13 slaloms for the men. It's different on the women's side because they're easier to run.
The women's there. Yeah. I was looking at the women's.
But yeah, you've got for the men. I believe it's 10, 10, 10, and then 13.
Yeah, and I understand. I actually understand why there's 12 women's GS, because that is right now the most exciting women's discipline, I believe.
It's obviously.
Yeah. Go on, Alan. Sorry.
There's more resorts can cater for tech events,
yeah, of course,
than what they can speed events, and I think that's why you see a lot more tech events.
Speed is more demanding.
Well, not just that.
Speed has training runs.
You need a mountain.
Yeah, you need all week as well.
Yeah, but you've got to have a big mountain to have a good, Yeah,
and exactly that explains why start fields are shorter, smaller. Why there's less nations. Like, look at the men's slalom. There's still a ridiculous number of nations in there, and much more than men's speed. But just read that quote there you've got from Marcus Wallner, Alan.
Well, they're glad to have achieved the main objectives, which was to ensure a healthy balance between speed and tech events on the calendar. This brings fairness to fight for the overall crystal globe. And from what we have heard from the athletes,
so
the athletes' representatives in today's meeting has been received very positively. The thing is,
so this was from the meeting in Slovenia earlier.
The downhills in Lenzerheide have been switched because it's got limitations on the upper section. In Lenzerheide.
So they're 2 Super Gs now, aren't they? So they do downhills in Garmin. That is really silly to me. It does make sense to have 2 downhills, because then you've got the exact same, you don't need to. Alice Robinson doesn't need to ferry to Germany if she doesn't want to do those downhills, and simultaneously, I mean, most downhills do Super G, but that hasn't happened before. I don't recall consecutive weekends where one resort has had 2 Super Gs and the next resort has had 2 downhills. Like, I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's an issue. It's just something that stood out to me.
I got an issue though.
You've got an issue. Here we go, Ian.
This is the again, we'll watch as much ski racing. Give me 5 races on the hand and come, I'll watch it. But We know Saturday Kitzbühel's great, but again, you look at those other sports. There's one Wimbledon final. There's one last day of the Open. It's like this back-to-back thing, and I get why it's there. I get why it has to happen, but again, it's almost like a little bit devalued, and you want to peak the viewers. Some will tune in Saturday, or some will tune in on Sunday. It's probably great for the athletes, but again, look at your overall media product. There's just all these little peaks and troughs and stuff. It's back to back. Does it mean as much? Yes, for the athlete and their fans and everything. But are we diluting the product? It's a question. Again, not necessarily my view, but is the product being diluted when it's back to back like that? And also the other factor as well, I think has been mentioned in the past week, it's much, much easier to reschedule a slalom. Like if we have an issue in Beaver Creek, for the women, they're not racing downhill again until early January, unless something gets rescheduled. And that's really hard for the reasons Alan said, to reschedule it downhill. And all you can really do is tack on another one somewhere, which is harder this year because you've already got 2 races there at a lot of weekends. So when you look at Cortina double downhill and Garmisch double downhill. So it's tricky if you lose one weekend, and that's the point that's being made, is the likelihood is speed is going to get cancelled more regularly than tech, and it's harder to make up the speed events, which would, through no fault of anybody, swing in favor of a tech athlete. The other point as well is your slalom has slightly more specialists, doesn't it? A lot of men and women are only more so on the men's side, but just doing slalom.
This is a point that I remember Armand Marchand making a couple of seasons ago, and they've clearly listened to him by putting 13 men's slaloms on the calendar, but 10 women's slaloms, and if I think the season that I'm talking about here, 3 of those, 2 cancelled and 1 that started but didn't finish. If you have 7 slalom races, and for someone who was in his position at this time, just outside qualifying for World Cup finals, he only did 6 of those races because he didn't make the 25. Then how is that a season? How is that not to be harsh to the athletes at all, because it's not through no fault of their own, but how is that a career? And I know that this is very kind of, obviously every single day is a day at work for an athlete, but to have 6 official kind of working days where you're at a race and doing your job and earning your money through prize money, then that's not what we want. And the same could be said in was it a downhill season a couple of years ago when they only had 6?
Yeah.
And there might well have been 9 scheduled, but if you only have 6, and again, no disrespect to him because he's amazing, Odermatt's won 4, then Well,
you talk. I mean, you can't. The weather will do
stuff.
The weather will do stuff, and you can try your best with the data that you have to avoid that, but sometimes luck's not in your favor.
Yeah,
like snowboard cross. Yeah.
The rescheduling is important because they did so well with it last year. Well. There was only those Courchevel races that didn't actually go ahead, full stop. Yeah. Because they weren't right. Okay, hard. If we're not getting that downhill in Beaver Creek, let's go to Wenger and throw in an extra one there. And they won't do that nowadays because of Kilda. But
you can do that to a point. But if you need to find another resort, it's really, really tricky and almost impossible. Like last season in snowboard cross, 7 individual races in the end. They had cancellations, so they didn't race 14th of December until I think it was the 17th of January. Wow. When you talk about things that struggle, I did a season. I'm going to try and find it. It must have been was it 2012? No, you talk amongst yourselves. 2013.
No,
there was like 3 races or something. It was mad. It's snowboard cross. Yeah, now tell you, the season didn't get started until the 14th of March. They had 4 on the calendar, 4 stops on the calendar. I don't know what else was taken out January or February, but they ended up with just 4 races. And the first World Cup that went ahead was the 14th of March.
And that's very unlucky. Like, that's nobody's fault.
Yeah, unlucky,
obviously.
but the calendars were they're struggling to find venues as well, which is
right.
I've got another point about calendars if you want to get into it. And that is
shoot.
that
This is the episode.
Fizz is multi-discipline, isn't it? Like,
yes,
it's one of the, it may still be the third biggest. I think I've said this before. Any summer or winter it's obviously the biggest at the Winter Olympics, but include the summer, it has the third most medals total available for its athletes because of the number of sports. So we're obviously talking about alpine, but then you have all these other disciplines as well. This is a challenge because you're not just competing for an audience. And yeah, the audiences are specialists, but there's people like me that will cross over and watch, lots of stuff.
Is alpine not quite significantly the biggest though?
No, it's massive. Yeah, for sure. That's not the point about it, but essentially it's this competition as well. So when you're trying to promote one thing, you've got to promote the others. But that's like, I don't know if you've ever seen the TV document. I'll send you last year's if I can find it. And it's got every World Cup start time for every FIS discipline on it. It's really interesting because that's a whole other task as well. That's why, right, in North America, let's get early starts on other disciplines. We want them in Europe, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Alpines in Europe, what can we get? Park and pipe wise, for example, in North America, so there's viewers all the time, but that's so hard to keep.
That also explains some like very random start times, like
absolutely.
That could I have no idea about this, but that could well be a reason why Alta Badia is night slalom. So there's another attractive proposition on the Monday, the 21st of December, quite possibly.
Yes. And you've got to factor all of that in, and the calendar planning meetings would be one of the toughest ones in Fizz. And you have one resort that go, we can't do that at that time.
Yeah.
And then you go
then it's all messed up.
You think we talk about like Norway ski racing. Yeah, they like their ski racing, but they love their cross country. Like, it's on a different level to alpine in Norway. But we see, the Austrians, they like their alpine, they're into their ski jumping. And that's, everything else is sort of nice. Oh, cool, Austrians done well, great. They have success across the board. Poland, ski jumping, hands down, like on another level of, so you've got to go, right, okay, the ski jumping this week's in Poland. So that's a big winter sport market. You've got to be moving these things around. But the point I was going to make was, I think it's swimming and athletics are the other sports where the medals are really high. Well, the vast majority of your swimming medals come in the same pool, in the one venue. There's some crossover of athletes, but there's different athletes, but it's all in the same pool. Athletics, track and field, your marathon, your race walk is done outside. We're in a completely different ballgame in terms of our athletes, the disciplines. It's like the Formula One World Championship. It's like calling it motorsport, and 1 week and that's the other point from the media side, is 1 week it's downhill, 1 week it's tech, 1 week it's this. It's constantly changing, but it's like having 1 week Formula One race, next week it's rally, tomorrow it's going to be Formula E, next week it's rally cross. That's kind of like Fizz is so big.
It's at least big. Two sports into one alpine, isn't it? Speed and tech. You could argue it's
it is two. It's two sports. So you've got all of these challenges as well when you're trying to create a global media product to make money for the athletes and to create an environment that allows them to thrive even more than they do at the moment. And in tennis, again, you've got your clay court specialist, but ultimately your world number one is there's a group of superstars. But in ski racing, you might have 2 or 3 of all speed, tech. It's a difficult balance.
Yeah, I think
it's good. The more stars we've got, the better.
I think the tennis. I remember speaking another conversation probably 2 years ago now on the pod and bringing up this tennis model as an idea where the Continental Cup is elevated to become like your 250, your 500 events on the tour, to then have one event in each discipline for both men and women that become your Grand Slam competitions. You know, your Kitzbühel Downhill is your Wimbledon, if you like. Your Wengen Super G is your Roland Garros. And your day-to-day World Cups are also, depending on course difficulty, course length, kind of history within the resort, again, then selected as either, I suppose, in the tennis model, 250, 500, or 1,000 events, and you make that Kitzbühel Downhill worth 200 World Cup points, but you make one of the other lesser races, maybe a newer event on the calendar, is 50 or a 40, and then you go all year round. You go Argentina, Chile, New Zealand, and all right, that's not great for travel, but they're going there anyway to train. And then, you know, you're older, Matt, you don't have to go to New Zealand to chase a 40-point GS in Coronet Peak. You can, you know, stay with the family. You can train on the glacier. But I see that as the most sensible, the most economically advantageous. I mean, you're copying one of the 5 biggest sports in the world, tennis, would you say? I don't know, but I would say it's top 5.
Big.
Just big.
But then if you're running that,
and there's of course no guarantee that it's
event in Mexico City, you might, or wherever, or
yeah,
Rome. I know Rome's quite a big one, isn't it? But you're probably struggling for sponsorship. You're struggling for it. On paper, it kind of makes sense, but I can't see how ski racing would get to that point. I think it's too, everything's quite established. I think, you know, another example, I'm working a sport this weekend, and they have 5 World Cup stops plus a World Champs in the middle of the season. They have double points at the last race.
So the last World finals Cup would be amazing.
Double points at the last race. It puts that emphasis. Now you're going, okay, I like that. I'm sure I would eat my arm if that has not been discussed in a FIS committee somewhere. I'm sure it would have been. I like it, but the problem like is the arguments write themselves for that.
yeah. It sounds more like a prediction league, like fun end of the season thing, but no, I can get on board with that. Is
another
else?
idea as well? Like,
go on.
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking a lot today. So in ski jumping has a Grand Prix series, which is kind of, it's a summer series basically. It's drifted more into October. In fact, we did our final summer event the weekend of Solden. I think was that the weekend I might have seen you guys, or was it something like that?
Yeah.
But no, I'd done BMX or something, hadn't I?
Oh yeah, in the middle of the night.
It's kind of good. So is the idea as well as to sit somewhere between Conti and World Cup to run an actual tour that is Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Chile, and travel, the emissions behind that. I've got to park that for a second because let's scope the idea out first, then go no because it's too much travel. But if you had a 5 or 6 stop that allowed that focus to different markets, so rather than having a one World Cup in Chile or New Zealand, you've got a mini tour that's sort of somewhere in between for the sake of just going to call it the Grand Prix or whatever. You can't call it summer because all the races are happening in winter, but call it Grand Prix, for example, and then you go, right, okay, we're in Thredbo for a couple of slaloms, off to Coronet Peak, a couple of slaloms, enough of a gap between them because you've got training. You're not going to get the big athletes there. Then we're off to Argentina, Chile, finish it off, whatever way around is going to work best. To put that global focus, at a different time of year, that's another idea. I personally don't think the World Cups that have gone recently in other In the Southern Hemisphere, in Australia, New Zealand, well, New Zealand actually is about the only one that's been hosting them, have particularly landed in the disciplines that they've been present in. So maybe you got to kind of look at what happened to the NZ Games as well, which is a great idea. Love that concept. They couldn't make it work financially, ultimately, which was a massive shame because there's some great people involved in that. But maybe if there's some sort of mini tour, different eyes, and that's before I've even got onto Asia.
That's before Asia.
Yeah.
Are we parking Asia for now?
I think it's just, for me, there's a lot of work going on with Fizz in China. I think they set an office up there. Developing snow sports in China. China is hosting events in other disciplines. We haven't been there on World Cup, but I think if you're gonna, it may be that the resorts just don't want to put the money in. Simple as that. The return is not high enough. In which case, if we can't go to these huge, particularly Japan, massive, snow sport mad places in the Alpine World Cup, then you need to look at the model and go, why do they not want to do it? I don't know, maybe they do and they're not able to. I don't know the reason. But you can't go over there for one weekend. You got to go over there and do a swing like golf does. It's the European swing, it's the UK and Ireland swing, do it that way. Like we do in North America in Alpine.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely the scope to
a huge market there, and we've had Olympic Games. I personally just want to see more World Cups there. I love seeing Andorra on the calendar. I think that's great. I'd love to see Spain, skied in Spain. Love the mountains in Pyrenees and Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada is one of my top resorts in Europe. I love it there. It's just fantastic. So yeah, but maybe they just don't want to do it. So maybe Fizz are going, yeah, we'd love to do that, but they're not getting the resorts aren't putting the money up or whatever. So it's not to criticize anybody. It's I just want to see the sport be more global, and how you do that is not easy.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Is there anything else you'd like to?
No, I don't think so.
No, Ian?
No, I've done more than enough.
I know you could continue until like July, but
as soon as I don't work in winter sports anymore, then
there we go. All right. Well, thank you very much to the both of you for your time, and of course, all the best with summer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
I'm sure you'll be back very
Nice
soon. A huge thank you to Ski Racing Media for their continued support in the official partnership now. Go and check out the website for all the latest to keep you up to date into June and beyond with the big election coming up. That's the main attraction of June this year, and we'll of course have full coverage of that when and where it happens next month. So, but yeah, thank you very much for this. A little bit different to have a proper delve into that calendar and really pick it apart as much as possible. But until next time, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And we will
ski you later.
Goodbye.